Once and Always. A title with a dual meaning, in my opinion. There's the obvious, once a Ranger, always a Ranger. A callback to the 15th anniversary, which, as a phrase, has become a key line for Ranger alumni. The other meaning is for more casual fans. Those that knew of Power Rangers from when they used to watch it as a kid, who will see this poster on Netflix and go, that show's still around? Yes, it was once, and it's always been there. It's still going. Now, I, like literally every other fan out there, watched with excitement when this special dropped on Netflix, and I had low expectations for a plethora of reasons. Some we'll get into later, so while the good parts were in fact great, I found myself not quite as enamoured with it as others. Now, before you switch off, this video is coming from a fan, a lifelong fan that gets frustrated when he can see the potential of a brand and it not being harnessed or even addressed. This video isn't intended to be negative for the sake of it or an attempt at weaponising followers, nor is my goal to diminish the impact that Once and Always had on the majority. You loved it? That is amazing, and I'm genuinely so happy for you. I simply want to highlight things that I felt led to this being a bit of a dropped ball for the 30th anniversary. Since voicing my opinion on this special, giving it a 3 out of 5 on my Twitter, I've been called a hater. I've been told that I just don't get it, told that a negative opinion isn't worth sharing, that I had too high expectations, I wanted the 2017 movie again, and told that this is Power Rangers. Therein lies the problem. Chapter 1, the brand. Power Rangers as a brand is a legacy franchise. Over its 30-year lifespan, it's been on the air the entire time. It's had merchandise on the shelves the entire time. There have been no breaks to that. Yet, aside from a single attempt in 2017, its core audience has never grown. It's tried a more mature season or two, of course, but ultimately it never took the audience with it and continued that same approach the following year. Look at similar properties such as Ninja Turtles, Transformers, or even Marvel and DC content outside of the comic realm. In the 90s, these were franchises that were seen as being for kids, and in some cases, the media created was made exclusively for kids. Power Rangers is no different, until now. Ninja Turtles has grown with its audience, whilst keeping its core. Transformers has grown with its audience, whilst keeping its core. Marvel and DC have quite incredibly grown with their audience while keeping their core. They all appeal to both younger and older demographics. In the 90s and noughties, if you had a DC shirt or showed interest in Transformers, you were a geek, the weirdo, as those were for babies. But for the last decade or so, these brands are breaking records at the cinema, dominating multiple areas of commercialism, and not seeing the latest MCU entry makes you the weirdo of the group. Power Rangers, however, has not successfully grown with its audience, ever. Yes, it's seen as nostalgic, which it is, and the successes of Once and Always are proof of that. Though if you look at a lot of the casual and critic responses to the special, so not people like myself or yourself watching this, there's a common theme. Badly acted, cheesy lines, 10 out of 10. Casual viewers and critics both expected the special to not have evolved since the 90s, which is great for a one-time watch, but is it sustainable? Would a set of specials in this tone be continued success, or simply a gimmick that wears off over time? A series in this style evidently wouldn't work in bringing the brand to the forefront of superhero television, as we've had that, we still have that, and we've got another one coming around the corner. A lot of the fans in Ranger Nation disliked Joseph Kahn's unofficial Power Rangers short in 2015. However, looking around outside of the niche dedicated fans, nearly 10 years on, that irrelevant short still gets attention. People still reference it when talking about how to tackle modern Power Rangers and use it as a comparison point against mainstream brands like Marvel or DC. People clearly still want to see more of that kind of more mature approach. Evidently, according to current Power Rangers showrunner Simon Bennett, Once and Always was mature. But was it really? Chapter 2, Writing. The writing in Once and Always felt very similar. The final screenplay was written by Becca Barnes and Alwyn Dale, the writers of the mainline TV show for the last 8 years, while Simon himself obviously had some degree of input being the showrunner and executive producer. As previously shown, the writing for this was supposedly mature. The most common evidence I see cited for this is the usage of the word kill and talking about death. And you know, we simply don't get that in modern Power Rangers. But we have had it.
Not to mention the fact that you can end up getting yourselves killed.
I don't understand. I thought you were dead.
The ship is dying. I don't want us to die with it.
You'll fulfill your destiny and take over Biolab. Because your father will die tomorrow.
We also know that former Power Rangers writer Jackie Marchand, who worked on the show over a lengthy 15-year period and is a huge fan favourite, was the story consultant. Originally, I thought that her inclusions would have been the name-dropping outside of MMPR characters and places due to her experience in the post-Zordon and Disney eras. But according to Simon, she's actually the reason we have the Radbug, as well as a visual mention of Bulk and Skull. You know, two immensely well-known characters from the original series. Something non-Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that was included was SPD, but in this instance SPA with Adam and Aisha. We hear they've been battling the Trubian Empire invading Sirius, the home planet of Doggy Kruger. But these timelines don't add up. Simon says that SPA is Space Patrol Alpha and was written to foreshadow SPD. With SPD series being set in 2025 and Once and Always being in 2023, this allows 2 years for Space Patrol Delta to establish itself as an intergalactic agency, as that establishment stems from the invasion and fall of Sirius. Except in the first episode of SPD, we hear that Boom flunked out of the Academy 5 years ago, aka 2020.
Me? I flunked out of the Academy. After only 3 days. That was 5 years ago.
And we have Sky's dad being an SPD Ranger when he's very much a child on Earth, likely around 2012 or so. This inclusion of SPA feels as though they knew SPD was set in 2025 and nothing else. SPA helping against the Trubian invasion doesn't line up. In fact, aside from having Billy, remember he made some invisibility device for SPA, you could unfortunately remove Adam, Aisha and SPA from Once and Always without losing anything of value or merit. It's a total missed opportunity and a fumbled, shoehorned reference. Lots of fans praise this special for being better written than what we're used to. However, while there are some well-written moments, I can't help but think that that's the veil of the returning MMPR actors clouding some judgment, even in the dialogue. You have awkward lines like,
"So why not let's just go there?"
You have lines that don't quite make sense.
Zack is back! In black!
Cool to hear, all to say for sure, but as an audience we just saw him morph 5 minutes ago, and the show mentioned that was only a year ago in universe, so that line feels a bit misplaced. We have Billy saying that,
Look, all-out destruction is rarely the most optimal strategy.
right, I get the moral that they're aiming for here, but wasn't the original show literally doing exactly that week after week for years? Moving aside from the dialogue and just into the writing in and of itself, you have a number of typical problems that we've experienced as Ranger fans. There's the lack of show don't tell, a big rule in writing. The introduction to a new character, in this case Min, being extremely sudden. No build-up, no tension, just the trope of, oh no, that person we've just mentioned is listening. Speaking of tropes, Deus Ex Dino Fury became somewhat known in the fanbase for revealing that the Morphin Masters intervene at several key plot points in the show's history. A fan asked Simon online why the Morphin Masters didn't just stop Trini from dying, and Simon's reply was, because then we wouldn't have a story. Surely that makes the actions of the Morphin Masters void of logical reason, and overall not a great idea? The idea sounded cool, but the execution feels disjointed. It's style over substance. Another instance of style over substance is the plot as a whole, really. The special needed a story that would bring back the Mighty Morphin team together and allow focus on them. So they wrote a story that theoretically involved every Ranger on Earth, yet we still just focus on Mighty Morphin. It's a prime example of show don't tell. They tell us that all the other Ranger teams are involved and show none of it. And the only representation of those other teams is whatever the other producer, Hilary Turner, could get their hands on from LA. The problem here is that these are random additions. They didn't think, who would we like to feature or who would work well thematically? Tanya, for example, she's the only active Zeo Ranger, since we see all the others in other roles throughout the special. Why not mention that? Why not have Kat or Rocky show some guilt towards her, or even acknowledge her when they find her? Phantom Ranger 2, he got captured? That is an insane story just waiting to be told. Not seen though, just told, because he's not Mighty Morphin. Although, for a celebration of the brand, and MMPR in particular, there's also a lot of iconic elements that are just missing. There was no use of back to action. Almost though, but it's still not quite present. There was no use of more phenomenal. which is odd with how much of the focus is on Billy throughout. No standing in a circle, hand in the middle, that huge visual moment that's often recreated when people satirise the brand, and would have fit perfectly with the levels of cheese here, but no. No viewing globe, despite it being part of the set and featured in earlier drafts.
The one thing I will say I was disappointed is they didn't use the viewing globe. We had a viewing globe. They didn't use it.
Well, they looked at the screen.
We looked at the screens on the computer, like in the actual command center. We looked on the screens, but we never looked at the viewing globe.
No power blaster at the end. Another massively iconic visual moment missed. And it's not just the writing where we're missing out on a few things. Chapter 3, Directing. No communicator jingle. They used comms a few times throughout, but we never hear that iconic. They also just hold their helmets instead of talking to their wrists, which is how the current production team depict in-suit communication for current seasons. It seems like a bit of an oversight. There's no memorable music. It's fantastic that they got Ron Wasserman back to record a more serious and cinematic tone for the special. But to not underlay the morphing sequence with the theme song is a massively missed opportunity. You already have a ton of fans making their own edits, doing just this with his older music. No team pose. We know that they shot this thanks to some Netflix behind the scenes content, but apparently they opted for the running shot as it was more dynamic, and that to use both would have undermined their impact. I get that, from an editing standpoint, trust me. But have you seen Power Rangers?
I'm referring to the 6-story high fireballs, like that one, right there. Now, could that happen to me in the kitchen or something?
Explosions are its thing. Post-shot, explosion, cut to a line from the bad guy, then running shot, explosion. We know they went overtime slightly from 44 minutes to 55, but surely there's room to trim elsewhere to add 10-15 seconds for the pure iconography. And there were no sparks. Maybe this was their idea of upping the maturity and tone, but stabbing a putty with the dagger and not producing some sparks felt kind of brutal. But enough on the things that we didn't get. Personally, I found some choices over the overall editing to be a bit odd as well. In the Instamorph with Billy, Cat and Rocky, we jumped to a side angle for a split second, then back to the front. Why? The side view provides nothing, it just breaks the flow. I can only imagine it was to hide a cut in the takes. In the primary morph too, the timing between Cat and Billy is odd. There's just a tiny bit of a lull. But also there's a visual inconsistency with how they're holding, with Billy fully thrusting his morpher out, whereas the others are already extended. These are totally nitpicks, I know that, but it's the morphing sequence. It's something fans have seen hundreds of times and will know the pacing off by heart. It's going to be one of the most desired and re-watched parts of the whole special. The Megazord as well. The awakening and transformation of the Zords, genuinely top tier, fantastic recreation. The fight, it's just not on par with modern Netflix specials. And this isn't me calling any visual effects artist lazy, I certainly couldn't create that in 3D. But you go to great lengths to recreate faithful set pieces and expand on some existing lore, yet the proportions, once transformed, were very off. The movement's odd, and overall it just felt unfinished in comparison. Chapter 4, Reception. Upon release, Once and Always made an immediate impact, in a way that few, if any, Power Ranger projects have achieved. Top 10 in Netflix movies. Not just kids movies, all Netflix movies. That's absolutely worth acknowledgement and acclaim. However, less than a week later, it was gone. Gone while other Netflix specials, also aimed at adults, stuck around. There are numerous reasons why this could be, and I wouldn't want to confirm or deny everything. I mean anything. The Rotten Tomatoes score is, on first glance, very impressive. It currently sits at 92%, significantly higher than any other franchise representation on the site. A quick glance at this, though, offers a little insight into the problems the special and the brand as a whole currently face. The 2017 movie, for example, sits at a much more damning 51% with 181 reviews. Your average Marvel or DC superhero film gets around 300 or more for what it's worth. Anyway, this works out to approximately 92 reviews that are classed as positive for Dean Israelite's reboot. Once and Always, meanwhile, currently sits at just 13 reviews. And while the majority of these are considered positive, there's a common thread running through them. Not for everyone. expectations should be low. Needed better effects, needed better dialogue. For fans only. With this, we can start to see a clearer picture of what's happened and what will continue to happen. The special, through the name and nostalgia value ascribed to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, drew a significantly larger audience than the franchise ever normally sees. And that audience then saw a production at the same level the franchise always sees. And it simply isn't enough to sustain or satisfy that wider audience, or to attract new fans, or to grow the brand. We're back at square one with nothing truly gained or ventured. Absolutely celebrate that MMPR still holds enough value that it can draw that audience. I certainly do. And I don't take that away from Once and Always in any way, shape or form. Far from it, actually. It confirms what many fans have often thought, that the worth isn't just from the name Power Rangers or the spandex suits. It's from those characters and the actors that played them. The people that so many children watched in awe in 1993 as they kicked and flipped their way, doing their own stunts no less, into their hearts so overwhelmingly that 30 years later, the sight of just 2 of the originals returning and the sounds of a few familiar voices drew more buzz around the franchise than it's had since 2017. If you've made it this far, there's a chance you're thinking I'm being overly harsh here or delving too deep. And I am, to a degree. I'm a huge fan of the brand. I also make a living directing and editing film and video. I know how easy it would have been to fix some of these things and elevate this special to the next level. There are good things about Once and Always. I love the origin of Robo-Rita, tying it to the Z-Wave and enabling that possibility for other Zordon-era villains to return. I really like that. But there are problems throughout too. And all these problems present here are present in Dino Fury, in Beast Morphers and Ninja Steel. People just aren't seeing them for whatever reason. Once and Always has this close enough trademark of the Simon Bennett era, the right by numbers approach almost. It's a superficial, surface level understanding of the brand, knowing what things are, but not what they mean. If you liked it, again, I'm not trying to change your mind. I want to be clear here, as I said at the start, I don't hate Once and Always. I don't hate Power Rangers. Quite the opposite, in fact. I love the Power Ranger brand. I love what it does well, and I love what it brings to the genre. I love what it has been and what it can be. And it's out of that place of love that I feel like these things need to be addressed. The brand can't grow. It can't continue to offer those things if it simply stays in one place. Thanks for watching.